Awoo! We crafted for the first time in PoE 2. We crafted and it went exceptionally well. Thumbs up, baby. I will admit it was a pretty deterministic craft, and I followed a video guide on how to do it because it involved lots of little bells and whistles and items that I had never heard of in my entire life, but it worked out. And when you see, it was hard. It's kind of hard. A lot of my audience have never played PoE and don't really understand the scaling of stuff. I don't really, but I get the base of it because of my MMO knowledge, right? And so we were looking, we did this whole craft, and it could have, like, bricked. It could have gone wrong, and it didn't. Like, unveiled it. Got one bad roll. I had a mod. The weapon I bought, the base I bought, had a really good... It was like 10% of physical damage would be leached as life, which is really important to me, because I'm going to have 0 mana and just take all my resources from my life pool, right? So... It's called Blood Magic, and that means I need life regen, so this was a really good mod, and that was the one that got irradiated. That was the one that got poofed, but that was the least concerning of all the mods. That was the one that was like, okay, if that goes, it kind of sucks, but it's not the end of the world, and it wasn't. But the weapon DPS, like the raw DPS, went from my 430 DPS weapon to a 670 DPS weapon. And people were like, you went through all that for like 200 DPS, you know, trying to look at it in sort of WoW terms or FF terms. I was like, you don't understand. This is all like the foundation blocks. Everything else that we have amplifies all these things together. Thankfully, on the skills, it does show like a reasonable approximation of the DPS. It's not accurate, but it's better. And it went from like 11k to 27k. It was just like, oh, it was like nearly, it was about double or more on some skills. And it was like, whoa, 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 whoa. I was like, exactly, that's the point. This thing is way better than the weapon we just had. Way, way better. And now my guy just murders everything. We're up to tier 12 maps, I think, which is pretty nice. I want to talk about the mapping system a little bit because obviously I'm getting more comfortable with it now and understanding how it works. But the main things people have been asking me is, like, how do you feel about the League? The temple mechanic. I don't like it. I'm not a fan of it. I find it just very intrusive and very cumbersome and just not that rewarding to go and do. It just feels like it gets in the way of what I want to do. So, yeah, I'm not a huge fan of it. I should play with it more because there's some really good bonuses. And you can get, like, limb removal, which gives you massive buffs and things like that. So I should play with it more. But I keep getting into the mindset of, like, I'll do it later because I'm doing something else when it pops up. I would love a way to just be able to do it when I feel like doing it, instead of it constantly popping up and not progressing any further until you do that one, if you get what I mean. So once you actually unlock the temple to go in and add to the temple, it'll stay like that until you do that, and all the other little temple icons you meet won't do anything. So just going to give you more access to the temple to go and do the run. I would much prefer to either bank it up, go and do it later on, do it when I feel like it, instead of running around, certainly in the early parts of the temple, where there's just not much to get. I kind of feel like you just, the meta, or the best way to do it is to, like, build the first temple and just leave. Like, click run temple and just leave, and just not bother with it. And do something like that, because it's just not that fun. I did run the risk of bricking my temple by doing the architect, which is such a trap. There's an infamous clip of Zizaran going around. This happened to him. I saw that clip. I was like, it can't work that way, right? And so I tested it. I thought it came from killing the architect. And I killed the architect, and nothing happened. And I was like, oh. And then people were like, oh, it's RNG. Like, there's an RNG amount of your temple that gets destroyed. I was like, oh, okay, cool. And then I got all these bonus rooms that I could add. So I literally go to the console and add in these new bonus rooms that I've got for the next run. And when I closed that window, it deleted everything, including the rooms I just put down. What the hell is this? And it doesn't pre-warn you. It doesn't go like, this will destroy all your temple rooms and something like that. It doesn't do that. It just wrecked. It just actually just wrecked the whole thing. So yeah, not a fan of the temple at all. I haven't really had anything beneficial come out of there. But the journey has been really nice. My point of doing this is I want to kill the Arbiter of Ash, ideally before Christmas. And learning more about the endgame of PoE, because I just never have time. So, few things then. The Ascendancies. Oh, man. Oh man. I'm going to get into the positives shortly. Believe me, there are positives. But I want to get these two things out of the way. The Ascendancies, again, do not like that system. I actually genuinely prefer the lab from PoE 1 to doing this, because you can get so just screwed. I prefer the Temple of Sekhmes, which is, you have to do 4 floors where you get like buffs. It's like a roguelite adventure. You choose your path to go through. I way prefer that to the Taskmaster. The Taskmaster one, I just feel like, because you have this boss at the end, depending on how powerful your character is, that you can't really mess around with, and you have to do it with affixes that you've had to, like, negatives that you've had to implement on yourselves, and there's no bonus, no positives, all negatives. It just makes it very awkward and unfun sometimes. Like, I've got there a couple of times and done all the floors, got to the boss, and the boss has just killed me with a mechanic that I've never seen before. And I'm like, oh, okay, so I need to rerun the whole place and do this again to now know how this mechanic works. And that's just not fun. It's very tedious. The Temple of Sekhmes is longer, I think, but you do get positives if you get lucky. I've done my 4th Ascendancy now. People were like, well, just, you know, people just pay for a carry. They don't bother with this. Like, some people clear it and then they just sell the fact that they can just get people in. I totally get that. And honestly, going forward, I wouldn't even be bothered about doing that at all. Just to get this out of the way. I want the Ascendancy, but the process of getting it sucks. But I got really lucky. I literally just got really lucky. Like, in the first options I had with the Merchant, I had like 50% increased damage. They do 20% less damage to me. The only downside I picked up, which I really didn't consider, was double speed traps. And that meant that, like, the firewalls and the lasers and the lava tubes were so quick that you just had to constantly roll to get through them, and you could get stuck on terrain and stuff like that, which could just mess you up. That's what doesn't help with the honor system, certainly as a melee, is you can pounce, certainly as a werewolf, and land on terrain that you get stuck on. It happened to me. I just got completely stuck until the pounce cooldown came off and I could jump off again. I couldn't move my character, and I was just like, okay, this kind of sucks, because ranged enemies are just hitting me and ruining my run. Kind of lame. So not a fan of that, but I did get it, which was very powerful. I managed to beat it. Will I do it again? Maybe at some point, but for now it was fine. And the other thing is the Atlas, the Endgame, PoE 2's Endgame. Let's talk a little bit about that, giving my fresh eyes on it. For those of you who've been playing it for a while, I think it's worth a discussion. Again, not a real fan of this. I see the obvious problems. The idea, I think on paper, makes a lot of sense of what GGG is trying to do here, which is they want you to do varied maps. They don't want you to be able to get your favorite map, or what is quote-unquote the most efficient map, and just do that one. And so you're forced to not do that. You're forced to jump between different maps along the pathways to traverse around the area. The issue I've run into is finding the areas for the quests, which seems to be RNG, because the story, the quest story, obviously, I'm assuming this is how this is going to work, is in order to access the Arbiter, I'm going to have to get the quest to get the fragments or whatever. I don't know if that's true. It might not be. But my quest is like, hey, you need to do tier 6 maps in a corrupted area. Okay, I'm already doing tier 12 maps just getting there. And I can't find any corrupted areas. I can't find any corrupted areas. Now, I will say I'm not exactly taking the most efficient routes of just going out in like a straight line or something to uncover as much map as possible. There are things I want to do. There's like some Atlas points to be got from some various areas where there's like you click these tomes and it'll unlock a boss area, and there's merchant areas and things like that. I'm not doing the most efficient route, but it feels very odd that playing the game in an exploratory and interesting way and not a hyper-efficient way actually means that for a lot of us, you kind of just outscale what the game is trying to guide you to do, like, really quickly. Maybe it's odd. It's just an odd pacing issue. It's a really odd pacing issue. On the note of doing the same maps, there was a similar moment that happened in World of Warcraft, so I'm going to compare it to that, which is during the Legion expansion, they had one dungeon out of their pool of like 9 or 10 dungeons that was just considerably shorter than the rest, and it was called the Maw of Souls. And they had a system in that game where the end result of doing these dungeons could reward you a legendary item. It was an RNG drop from finishing a dungeon to get the legendary items. So the logical play by everybody was to do the shortest possible dungeon over and over and over and over again. Because you just had more end boss loot. You didn't care about any of the other loot that would drop. You just cared about getting the legendary, roll the gamble machine on getting the legendary. And so doing that dungeon, which people could clear in just a few minutes, was obviously the play. I don't see PoE being exactly like that, at least for now. What I see is that I have a certain system I want to engage with, be it Abyss or Ritual or whatever, and there are certain maps that are more conducive to that system. And that gives some variation on how you play the game. Now, what I'll say is that if I watch content creators, which I do watch a lot of PoE content creators, they're very regularly doing different maps when they're assessing different projects, right? They're doing different things because this one is better for this, or this is better for card drops, this is better for this is better for that. And I don't see them doing the same maps. They might do 50 of the same map, or 30 of the same map, or 20 of the same map. So like, it was something like Empyrean is like, it's gonna, like, this is the maps we're gonna run for this. Oh, we need this specific divination card and we can't scry it this way, so we're going to do this map. Giving the maps, I think there's, okay, let's simplify where I'm going with this. I think there's a better idea that GGG could go with is by kind of making the map itself more tempting by having things in there that come from there, like they did with cards in PoE 1. This is preferable. So that's going to give the variation, is people who really want this item or whatever push towards there. More incentive than that, not just uniques and things. Like, more incentive for that. Because you end up running a bunch of maps that are just not that fun. And if you're using the Atlas, like I'm focusing on Abyss because I like Abyss. It's less intrusive, lots of monsters. Just get a chest or you get the Abyssal Depths. And you just kind of blast away while you're doing your map ordinarily. Again, I like non-intrusive content. And so Abyss is preferable to me. But there are some maps where Abyss is just absolutely awful. Like, it's so bad. You're just in like a tight corridor, so all the mobs are just on top of each other and you can't move, and it's just not nice. Where an opener map is more fun for me to do. Or a linear map like the Ravine is more fun to do. But it's nice and open as well. It's wide. You can get where you want to go. I worry. My comment would be, if I was to talk to Jonathan right now about this, or Mark, is if your concern is that your maps aren't tempting enough by themselves because they're too big, or there's problems in there that you know players are going to have friction with, that's a map problem, not a player problem. And forcing the players to do a variety of maps and stages in order to make sure your maps are getting used, even the ones that are less favorable, I don't think is the correct way to go, because it's just less fun for the player. I hope that makes sense. Right? Is if it, I would look at it as like, okay, people don't run the bog at all because of its design. That's a bog problem. That's not a player problem. It's because there's a problem with that map that needs to be assessed and looked at. Because I do think there's a more fun experience in a game like Path of Exile where your job is to grind, right? That is, you're grinding for power and to roll the slot machine. There's a lot more comfort when you're doing that kind of repetitive process in familiarity of like, I know where the boss is going to be, I know the layout here, I know where my borders are, and if I'm locked in to sit down for a few hours and play some Path of Exile, I want that instead of relearning time to time again until I'm not accumulating knowledge of one map really specifically or one or two. I'm having to learn every map slowly. And sometimes I've forgotten by the time it rolls back around to get to that area. That's what I'm experiencing right now. But as I said, we're still pretty early endgame, and that opinion might change as time goes on. I understand the point of it. I'm not sure I agree with it, though. So in the terms of the positive, though, so much to do. I do like the world map layout where there's interesting things on the map to do, like targets to go for. Like when you see that there's something happening here that I need to clear this area for, and that's going to then unlock something. I like that sense of progression. I think that works really well. It gives a good focus of target that isn't just go higher, higher, higher. It gives this like more freedom to explore the world and do stuff. A little wary of how the RNG is going to work. Some people have pre-warned me about getting boss tablets, as this can be a real problem with finding where these things come from. I don't know what they are yet. They're keeping it secret. Just like, just be aware you might get to a point. This is the warning I got. You might get to a point where you're more than ready to go and actually start challenging the Arbiter, which is our goal, but you're not going to be able to get the item to do it without just smashing, looking and hunting down the place that you can get the fragments from. In which case, just buy them. Because some people got them really quickly, and some people can look... we had some horror stories start coming in. It's like, I did 500 maps before I found what I was looking for. It just did not appear for me in my world. Whereas other people got it in like 20 maps. It's just the nature of the beast. And obviously, Path of Exile is an RNG-based game. But I'm looking forward to seeing how that goes for me. Perhaps I'll get lucky. I don't know. I have been a little lucky so far. I've managed to get 3 or 4 divines to drop, which have been able to really boost my build. My build is a little scuffed right now. I'm very much a glass cannon, which wasn't intentional, but I need to work on my defenses, because damage I have. I can kill, as long as nothing hits me, I kill everything. But in the Path of Exile world, where you can have limited revives, that's a little spooky. And now I've gone blood magic. I'm now taking more from my life, which is not wise. So more defensives are needed to be a bit more robust. Hopefully that'll work out. All right, so there it is. I'll be updating you later. Bye, guys.